Debate. My name is Jimmy Brown, Chairman of the Natick Forever Political Action Committee, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies for tonight's debate. Before we get underway, would you please rise with me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence to remember those who have made the eternal sacrifice for this great country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I'd like to just quickly go over the rules for tonight's debate. It is being covered live by Natick Pegasus, and it will be rebroadcast a number of times between now and Election Day, which, as we all know, is Tuesday, November the 4th. You're welcome to take pictures, whatever you like, walk around the auditorium. I hope you will kind of sit down in your seats and listen to what these gentlemen have to say. But if you are up and around, the restrooms are to the back, out that way. Just be aware that there is a lot of audio and video equipment around, and watch out for the cords. You're welcome to take pictures too if you would like. Candidates will be allotted 2 minutes each for their opening statements and 2 minutes for their closing remarks. 2 minutes will be allotted for answers and responses to each question. 1 minute each will be afforded for rebuttal and re-rebuttal if needed. At his discretion, the moderator can allow slightly flexibility to these time guidelines. Please allow me to introduce your candidates for state representative for the district, which includes Natick, Sherborn, and Millis. To your left, Representative David Linsky, the incumbent, and next to him is his challenger, Doug Grindle. Step these off for the nice time. As a result of an earlier coin toss, Mr. Linsky will begin with his opening statement and will be first to answer question number 1. He will also be first with his closing remarks. Please allow me to introduce tonight's guest moderator. Mr. Rick Holmes is the opinion editor for the Metro West Daily News, a Western Massachusetts native. He earned his BA degree from Pitzer College in Claremont, California. He began his newspaper career as a reporter and editor of a small paper in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. Joining the Middlesex News in 1985, he worked in succession of newsroom positions, including bureau chief, managing editor, and editor. Since 1994, he has served as editor of the opinion pages for the Metro West Daily News and Milford Daily News. His editorials, columns, and blogs posts appear in Gatehouse Media newspapers and websites in Massachusetts and across the country. This year, he was named Massachusetts political editor for Gatehouse Media, which owns 8 daily and more than 100 weekly newspapers in the Bay State, and he is chief editor of its website, masspoliticalnews.com. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Holmes, and he will direct Mr. Linsky to begin with his opening statements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thanks, Natick Forever, for pulling this thing together. Thanks, Pegasus TV, for getting it on the air. And I want to thank everybody watching at home and everybody here at the Natick High School Auditorium, the beautiful new Natick High School Auditorium, for taking the time to make an informed vote on November 4th. Let's jump into it with opening statements. As Jimmy mentioned, the first 2-minute statement will be made by Representative David Linsky.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you to Natick Forever for pulling this together. For the last 15 years, I've been honored and privileged to represent the people of Natick, Millis, and Sherborn, and I consider myself to be a very lucky man. When I get up and I drive around this town that I've lived in for my entire life and been privileged to raise my 3 sons in, I see a lot that I've been involved in and accomplished. We see this new Natick High School. We see a new Wilson Middle School. We see the new Natick Community Senior Center. We see a new library in the town of Millis. We see road and bridge projects everywhere. And I consider myself very lucky to have been a part of accomplishing all of that. Natick is a great community, as are Sherborn and Millis. We have a thriving economy. We have a hot real estate market, and it is a place where people want to live, work, and raise a family, and I'm very lucky to be able to have lived here and raised my sons here. But I have a lot more to accomplish. I want to continue the excellence that I have brought to this town. I want to continue to make this town better. I want the economy to grow. I want more good jobs, and I want to continue the superb school system that we are part of. There's a lot more to accomplish. But apart from the big picture accomplishments like we have, what is important is over the past 15 years, we have helped 4,000 families with real issues and real problems, whether it is help for a disabled person in the family, whether or not it is health insurance that somebody needs, an unemployment check. This is helping real people, real families with real problems on a daily basis. I am proud of what I have accomplished. I am proud of what I have brought to this town. I am proud of what we have done so far, and we have a lot more to do. I would be honored and privileged to receive your vote on November 4th. I am proud to everything we have done, and I want to ask for your support on November 4th.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Doug Grindle.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Natick Forever, and thank you all of you for coming here and also watching on television. This forum is a great opportunity to hear about the very, very different philosophies between my opponent and myself. My name is Doug Grindle. I'm running for state representative here in Natick, Sherborn, and Millis. I believe the job is best done. The government is best when it's effective, it's efficient, and also it's as small as possible, but also getting the job done. I'm running because a lot of good things are happening, but a lot of bad things are happening too. The cost of college education is skyrocketing. Graduates of high school and college are looking for jobs that often just aren't there. Our state fails to help those that need help the most, like seniors struggling to pay rising property taxes. I think it's time for a change. We need to think differently about how we do all of these things. It's time we got away from the failed political system of the past, where people at the top made the system work for themselves and their friends. And well, as for the rest of us, good luck. We need to change this, and now is the time to make public service really mean something again. I spent much of the last 10 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. As a civilian brigade advisor with the U.S. Army, I went into village after village asking people what their problems were and how we could fix them. Then we went back and worked with military and civilian agencies to push in resources and make things better. We came up with new ideas and better ways of doing things constantly. I did the same thing for 2 years with the U.S. Agency for International Development in districts in southern Afghanistan, where no one else wanted to go. And I spent 6 years in the war zone as a reporter, bringing the truth of what was happening to people back home here. I spent years trying to serve the public in the war zone, and I risked my life every single day there to do it. I'd like to serve the public here in Massachusetts as well, with fresh ideas and the willingness to dig deep and find the best solutions to the enormous problems that we all face here. It's time to apply common sense to our problems. We need to seek out the truth and work together, reach across the aisle, and get the best ideas into action. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We'll go to our first question, and actually it's a series of 4 questions, much like the 4 questions we'll be seeing on the November 4th ballot. And what I'd like to do is learn more about your thinking by asking you about the 4 questions on the ballot, and if you could tell us not just your position on the question, but something about how you came to that position and what it says about the way you approach public policy questions in general. So the first question will go to David, and it is on the question of the repeal of the gas tax indexing. You have 2 minutes.
All right. I'm going to vote no on the repeal of the gas tax indexing, but if the voters in the Commonwealth vote yes, so be it, and we'll deal with it, and we won't change it. I'll say that if that's what they want to do. But my vote to not repeal it will be consistent with a whole series of votes that I took on the repeal of the gas tax. Strike that, on the indexing of the gas tax. And people should know that the indexing is going to cost the average family $3 to $4 a year. That's the amount of money that all of question 1 is all about. $3 or $4 a year for that. And you have to realize that we have a serious transportation infrastructure problem in Massachusetts. We have failing roads and bridges. We do. And quite frankly, we didn't raise the gas tax for 23 years. Our gas tax is currently in the middle of the pack nationally, and even with the indexing, it is going to be the lowest gas tax out of all the New England states except for New Hampshire. We have transportation needs in Natick. We have transportation needs in the Commonwealth, and quite frankly, what we're talking about is a quarter of a cent per gallon on an annual basis, $3 or $5 a year per family. So I'm going to vote no.
Thank you. Doug?
Our country was founded upon a basic tenet of no taxation without representation. Absolutely clear, absolutely honest. If you want to have a tax and you want it to go up in the legislature, vote for it. Perfectly simple. The simple, answer is that we don't really, we absolutely should be repealing this automatic gas tax. We don't really have any issue with pulling together enough of these, enough revenue. There's a $3 billion bond bill which actually pays for roads and things like that and bridges. But the problem is that oftentimes the way the state spends the money, it doesn't spend it quite as efficiently as other states. So what we have is we don't have really a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. Let's just think about a recent study from the Reason Foundation, which found that here in Massachusetts, just for maintenance per mile, we spend $78,200. Nationally, it's $26,000. So really, we spend about 3 times more than the national average just on maintenance per mile. If we look at administration, we spend 7 times the national average per mile of road fixed. We spend $74,800 per mile. Well, the national average is $10,500. Why is it that we can't manage to spend in a reasonable manner? Now, obviously, we need money for roads, but then we also need money for all sorts of things. And I would argue is that it doesn't make any sense for us to have the MBTA losing ridership. Over the last 10 years, it's gone down 10%. At the same time, we have tolls. Over at the backup at the Western tolls is 7 miles most days. It's absolutely incredible that we don't have a knit-together transportation policy that can address the real issues that affect people's lives every day, and yet we have to come back to these questions which basically are unfair and go against our democracy.
Let's go to David. You want to respond to that?
Sure. I'm glad you're citing the Reason Foundation, which is a Tea Party-backed organization, and it quite frankly doesn't have anything to do with what's going on in Massachusetts. It's comparing Wyoming roads, which are new, and with Massachusetts roads, which are over 200 years old. We have a bridge here in Natick, the Marion Street Bridge, which failed because it was over 100 years old. And quite frankly, it's going to take some money to fix that Marion Street Bridge, and we need the revenue to do it. We have the Oak Street and Route 9 intersection under construction. That takes revenue. We have the Route 27, Route 9 intersection that needs to be done. That takes revenue. We have transportation projects going on all over this district because I've worked hard to bring those projects to fruition, and there's a lot more to be done. Quite frankly, we have representation. My votes are public. I voted in favor of that gas tax several times, and I expect in next session that the legislature will have to deal with it again because there's an opportunity to bring that up, and I know that the votes will be there. If we do it, we'll fund those projects.
Doug?
Let's look at transportation again. The Department of Transportation here was provided the money for 100 fuel-efficient cars. It was supposed to take off the road 100 old Crown Vics. Didn't do it. And so what we see is, time and time again, is that things the state should be doing, it's simply not doing. When we look at a bridge like the Marion Street Bridge, no one really understands even what's going on. So when we sit here and we say, there needs to be this done and that done, it really strikes me as odd that the average common person doesn't really understand what's going on in their own community. If you talk with a bunch of people, you can ask them, hey, when's the Marion Street Bridge going to be finished? They won't be able to tell you. There's a reason for that, because our government is not responsive enough. And one of the reasons it's not responsive enough is because it's not held to account. And one of the reasons it's not held to account is because we need more transparency. And the Reason Foundation has a terrific, terrific study, and I would suggest anyone who's interested go and look it up online.
I'm going to move on to the next question then. Question 2 on the ballot, and this is going to be answered by Doug first, is whether the bottle bill should be expanded to include other containers.
If there's one thing I really hate, it's water bottles. When I was in Afghanistan and Iraq, I spent years there. And you would go through 6 or 7 water bottles a day. Little ones, the big ones. It's terrible for the environment. There's nothing better than actually getting water bottles out of circulation. I can't stand water bottles. But, you know, I also don't like this bottle bill. I don't think that this is the right bottle bill, and there are other proposals out there that would do a lot better job. This is the problem with the bottle bill as it is. The activists say that it really wouldn't increase recycling rates. Activists also point out is that the bottle bill really, it would collect money on a basis that would continue to rise and rise and rise, that basically would have no control over. Now, it's been 5 cents for about 25 years. Who knows what it's going to be 10 years from now, 15 years from now? It could be 10 or 15 cents. Do you really want to be paying 10 or 15 cents on milk bottles, on water bottles, on everything in 10 or 15 years? And you just don't really know where the money goes. Now, the legislature is supposed to allocate the money towards recycling programs, but activists will tell you is that right now the money that's collected off of the bottle bill doesn't all go to recycling. Now, I would absolutely support any sort of a measure that took the money from a revenue source that actually perhaps a 1 cent overall sort of charge, and actually put it into protecting woodlands, actually putting into increasing our recycling programs, but that's not what happens. $30 million of that has gone into the general fund. The language is simply not tight enough for us to actually go forward with this. And while I absolutely think that water bottles are a terrific problem and absolutely need to be addressed, I don't believe that that money will end up going to where it needs to be so we can solve this problem.
So you're going to vote no?
I am not going to vote to extend the bottle bill.
Very good. David?
I'm going to vote yes on expanding the bottle bill. I've been proud to be a co-sponsor of that bill in the legislature for many years. I'll be casting a yes vote on November 4th. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Sierra Club. I'm proud to be endorsed by Clean Water Action. I have a 100% rating from the Mass Audubon Society, and I have for 15 years. I have one of the strongest environmental records in the Massachusetts legislature. I intend to keep it. I think it's the right thing to do.
Very good. Let's move on to question 3 on our ballot.
No rebuttal?
Well, do you want to rebut at that?
I would. I'd love to, actually. Yeah,
Okay, we'll give you each a minute.
Okay, thank you very much. This is the thing about the environment. The environment is one of the most absolutely important things that we could possibly do. We must protect the environment. What we are not seeing right now are concrete measures that actually does that in a sustained basis, not bringing in the new ideas. For instance, now up in Central Mass, they have a new idea. Here's a new idea. It's just like people actually in a high school is that they will take the refuse from the school lunches and they will compost it. Well, that's a terrific idea. Just think of all the haulage that you're saving. Just think of all the useful things that compost can do. And yet, and also look at Natick. We see Pat Conaway's recycling bins all over the place. Now, these things need to be spread around the state. We absolutely need to have a central forum, a central meeting place where all of these ideas can be put together and we can actually institute the best of the best. When we look at how America runs the best when we can experiment and bring together the ideas and make it move forward. And that's not happening as it should be now.
Doug, if you'd actually kept up with what's going on in the state, you would know that those food refuse regulations have just come into effect statewide. And so if you were keeping up with the news, you'd realize that what you're talking about is already law. But what I want to talk about is my support for environmental issues here. When you drive around this district, you see the parks that I've done. You see Murphy Field. I did that. You see John Jay Lane. I did that. You see the new field in Millis. I did that. I have a strong environmental record. It's great what they're doing in Central Mass. I'm more interested, quite frankly, in what we're doing in Natick, Sherborn, and Millis.
Let's move on. Question 3 on our ballot is the repeal of the casino law. David, you get to answer this one first. Which way do you vote, and what does it tell us about the way you approach government?
All right. I'm going to vote to keep the casinos. We now know in Massachusetts where the casinos are going. They're going in Everett. They're going in Plainville for the racetrack slot machines out there, and they're going to Springfield, and then they're going to go someplace in southeastern Mass. So we know that there's no direct effect here in Metro West. I originally, quite frankly, because I'm not a gambler at all, I wasn't really big on casinos, but I voted yes, and I'm going to vote to continue the casinos because, quite frankly, I'm sick and tired of seeing Massachusetts residents get in their cars and drive to Connecticut and drive to Rhode Island and make thousands and thousands of dollars, turns into millions and millions of dollars on a yearly basis in those states. And quite frankly, I want to capture some of that revenue and keep it here in Massachusetts, and more importantly, keep those jobs here in Massachusetts.
Okay. Doug?
You know, I'm extremely troubled by the casino idea. Some days, some people say, well, you know, we absolutely need casinos because we need the revenue. We absolutely need casinos because, you know, we need the jobs. But if you look at the studies, the jobs really, there are construction jobs that start out. But if you look at the communities, it's a very, very closely run cost-benefit thing. On one side, people say, well, you know, there is extra jobs and like, you know, and it's good because then the towns get more money. But on the other side, the kind of jobs aren't necessarily the greatest ones. It's not jobs appropriate for a mixed economy as we really like to grow. And then you have all these external effects. You have like crime, then you have like congestion. And it's all very well for people in one town, but what about those bleed over effects into the towns next door? On top of that, it's just very troubling because every time you set these things up, you have $1 billion corporation on one hand and a few local activists on another, and that does not strike me as fair. I will say this, so I'm not going to vote for the casinos to be here. I will say this, it is absolutely important that if the voters come up one way or another, that the legislature should actually follow what the voters say. This is sacrosanct. This is direct democracy. This is a terrific thing. If the voters are going to make their voice heard, it's the least we can do to actually follow what they say. And we see this not happening on a fairly regular basis. And when we think about, for instance, the income tax, why is that not at 5%, even though people ask for that to be at 5%? Who knows? It's been a decade. Still nothing happening. So it's important then that when people take the time to vote and they actually decide that we actually follow what the people think. I simply don't think that the casinos are a very good idea on balance. It's a great idea, and then when you dig a little bit deeper, it's just not a good thing.
David?
I'm glad you brought up that income tax, Doug, because in case you didn't know it, because maybe you didn't follow what the legislature has done, the income tax rate has actually gone down the last 3 years because the economy is doing better and it's tied to indicators. When I took office, the income tax rate was 5.95. It's now going to be down to 5.15 at this year. So I think the legislature has been very responsive. As a matter of fact, we have one of the strongest state economies of any state in the country. We have the best bond rating of any state in the country. We have one of the largest reserve funds of any state in the country. And on a per capita basis, it is the largest. Other states envy what we're doing here in Massachusetts. Other states envy what the legislature has done. So I'm quite proud of it.
Another minute.
It's striking that anyone would stand here and brag about thwarting the will of the people for a decade. I find that hard to understand. I'm a little bit disappointed, frankly. I think it's also difficult to brag about economic performance when the state also has the highest per capita debt in the entire country. I think it's also difficult to brag about economic performance when we have a bifurcated economy and many, many people who are graduating from high school or college can't find a job. I think it's difficult to brag about the economy when Money Magazine this month alone projected job growth in the Boston area as 0.4%. That's less than half of 1%. It's not good enough. And yet to hear the other side. It would be as if there are rainbows and unicorns. It's just simply not the way. And I'm afraid that it's difficult for voters to get to the heart of it without the transparency of actually knowing how to dig into this and actually understand what's going on when both sides aren't really going for the truth. And I find that very disturbing.
Yep. Please hold your applause. We're going to clap for both of them at the end. So let's go to our last ballot question. This has to do with mandatory sick leave. And Doug, you're the first one to weigh in on this.
Sick leave it's a difficult question. On one hand, we absolutely need to make sure that people have sick leave. On the other hand, is this really the right vehicle to do that? The problem with having a sick leave mandate, so to speak, it applies across every industry, whether or not you're working in a fast food or in a restaurant, whether you're a computer programmer, whatever you are. And do we really have an economy which is one size fits all for these requirements? What we have right now, unfortunately, so I would not support the sick leave as is. I think that it's something which needs to actually be put forward and handled industry by industry. Now, if we had guidelines, industry by industry, now that would be fair, and I could see that happening, but I don't see it being fair now, and I think that Charlie Baker's come up with some sensible ideas, however, which might actually change things, perhaps waiting 90 days before things start to kick in. There's a whole bunch of different ways we can look at this. This is not the only way to get sick leave for people, and let's face it, it's mandated for a large number of companies anyway, for all the bigger ones. So, but when we look at this, let's just keep in mind what we're doing. People get out of college, people get out of high school, and they need a job. We absolutely cannot be killing the goose that lays the golden egg. And I'm very, very concerned that small businesses are not hiring. I've been on doors month after month after month, and all I hear from small business owners is, I'm not hiring. Between Obamacare and between the cost of doing business, they're like, I'm not taking anybody else on. And I think this is something else which, frankly, it's a millstone that threatens to drag our golden goose under the water.
David? Doug, this is not a difficult question. I'm voting yes because this is a pro-women's rights and a pro-family question, Doug. I've raised 3 boys in this town, and I know a lot about family. And quite frankly, this is a measure that is to help working families on a daily basis. And Doug, if you'd actually read the question, if you'd read the legislation, you know that it really doesn't apply to the smallest of businesses. It's not one size fits all. So that the devil in the legislature, Doug, is quite often in the details. And I'd suggest that you actually take a look at the details.
You want to come back?
I think it's difficult when people start throwing names around like this is a women's issue, this is a small business issue. It's an issue for all of us to have jobs for our kids, for our neighbors, for our parents, for everybody. And when we start to undermine that ability to happen, we are seriously tearing at the fabric of the society. And it's very difficult to take that step. Now, 70% of jobs come from small businesses, and small businesses have to be supported. And if we don't support small businesses, we don't get jobs. And if we don't get jobs, we don't get revenues into the state. And when we get revenues in the state, everybody pays higher taxes, and the whole cycle starts all over again. It's bad news for everybody when we don't have jobs coming up. And we absolutely need more of these. And we don't need 0% unemployment for computer programs and everybody else is underemployed. We need a vibrant economy. So we've got to be very, very careful in what we do.
You want me to respond?
You get another rebuttal if you want.
Sure. I am absolutely quite proud of my record on small businesses. I was recently honored by the Retailers Association of Massachusetts for my work for retailers. And quite frankly, in this particular district, I'm most concerned about what we have going here in Natick, Sherborn, and Millis. I think that if you talk to small business owners, they're quite happy with what I've been able to do for this community.
Very good. We will change things up just a little bit now. I'll take a break and let the candidates ask each other questions. Each one will get a shot at the other. And first, we'll have Doug posing a question to David, and then we'll do the same routine.
Sir, over the last 12 years, local aid to Natick has gone down. It's only recently come back up. The lowest point was in 2006. The state budget since 2002 has risen about 50%. Mm-hmm. It's gone up about $13 billion since then. Now it's $36 billion. Why have you not ensured that local aid, the money coming from the state to our towns, has not gone up and matched the growth of the state budget?
Doug, you have no idea what the real figures are. You're right. That one category of local aid, which is lottery aid, has stayed relatively constant and has gone up. But what you didn't bring up was that school aid, which is 3 times the amount of local aid that goes to this town, since I've been in office, has gone up by 184% to Natick, in Millis 193%, and Sherborn by 133%. It is tripled. It has tripled when you add up local aid, when you add up school aid, when you add in school building assistance, when you add in special education. I have worked hard for 15 years to bring in every single dime of local aid in all forms, not just that category, that you pick out one category out of 10, but all forms of local aid. This very auditorium that we are standing in at this very moment is a testament to the amount of work that I put into building this high school. If you talk to anybody on the school committee, if you talk to anybody involved in public schools, they will tell you what was involved in wringing out every dime possible for this particular building, for Wilson, for the new Dover-Sherborn Regional High School, for the new Dover-Sherborn Regional Middle School, for the library in Millis, for all of the other school buildings in here. Natick, Sherborn, and Millis are doing very well, and they are getting well more than their fair share of local aid when you compare it to other towns in the state. And that has not been by accident. That has been by hard work and by knowledge of the legislature and getting out every single dime for this community and the communities of Millis and Sherborn as well.
Oh dear, I'm not sure the facts bear that out.
Look at the facts.
This is the problem, is that if we look at local aid, it's now 2002 is 12.1 million. Looking all over, this is from the cherry sheets. The state puts this out. 12.1 million for Natick. Let's take Natick. It's easy. In 2014, it's 12.3 million. This is what it looks like. That's the graph. See, in the middle, it goes down. Right in the middle, the lowest it went was 9.6 million in 2006. That was before the recession hit. Now, if we think about it, over 12 years, this has gone down in real purchasing power because there's inflation. So $1 back then is worth 75 cents today. So not only has it gone down in the middle years, down to 9 million, 9.5 million, but by golly, you know, it's gone down and we've lost all that inflation dollars. So 12 million today isn't what it used to be. It's now 9 million. So town officials in places like Millis are shocked to hear this. And they sure enough, the Chapter 70 has gone up. Well, absolutely. That's absolutely the case. Chapter 70 in 2005 was 3.9 million for Natick, and now it's just 2014, it's 8 million, 8.3.
Right. It's doubled.
And so the thing is, but that doesn't tell nearly the whole story. This is the whole story. And unfortunately, you can dress up a pig with lipstick, but it's still a pig. And the simple fact is that we're not getting that money.
David,
now,
your rebuttal.
Thank you, Rick.
I'm sorry, we have a 1 minute
No,
rebuttal
that's not a rebuttal. I asked the question in the beginning, so this is my 2-minute answer to my question. This is my 2-minute answer to my question.
I apologize.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Holmes. Now, at the same time, the state budget has gone up.
You have 30 seconds.
In the same time, the state budget has gone up from 23 up to 36 billion. So really, if we'd looked at it, this should have gone from 12 to 18. We're missing $6 million a year. And you know how much we pay in Natick for police this year, 2014? $6.6 million. We're essentially losing the entire budget for the police department in Natick because it's not kept up with what the state's been spending. For instance, the state went up $1.7 billion last year alone.
All right. Now you may have a rebuttal.
Thank you very much. Doug, once again, you're eliminating all categories of local aid. You're eliminating all of the special education money that comes into the town. You're eliminating all of the school building assistance that comes in millions and millions and millions of dollars. Doug, your numbers are wrong, quite frankly. They're not adding up all the categories. You're adding up 2 categories, and there's a whole lot more in the state budget than that. That's all.
Okay, I'm going to go on to the next question.
I don't get a
Assume that
rebuttal
the
off of that?
question was 1 minute. The first response is 2 minutes. The second response is 2 minutes.
It's slightly
the other
different.
rebuttal. It'll be the same way for him. But David, you can ask your question now.
Thank you very much. Doug, I'm going to ask you a question that gets asked in virtually every forum, every debate I've ever seen, no matter what the candidates are running for, whether they're running for selectmen, whether they're running for Congress, whether they're running for state representative. So the question is actually quite simple. Doug, could you tell us, please, your 3 biggest and best accomplishments for the people of Natick, Sherborn, and Millis?
You know, the funny thing is about working in government, and I've worked in government over in Iraq and over in Afghanistan. This is the funny thing about working in government, is that it requires a certain skill set. That skill set includes getting along with people. It includes building coalitions. It includes engaging people and coming up with better ideas and doing a better thing. So let me tell you a little story about Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, I went out on patrols all the time, and I would go and I would say, hey, look, here's a village with a couple of wells and these not being used. Why are these wells not being used? And the answer would be, well, because there's a pipe inside and the pipe isn't working. And so I'd say, well, that's crazy, you know, so why don't we put them together and fix these wells? And they'd say, well, it costs $100 to fix that. And I'd say, well, gosh, it's too bad nobody's doing that. So fast forward a little bit, and I was in charge of digging 80 wells for $200,000. And by golly, if like that didn't cost about $2,500 a well. And so we dug those wells, and then we also came up with a program that was absolutely innovative, that was run by the Afghan government, and we put it together by putting together the Afghan provincial government, the Afghan local government, chiefs, community elders, regular people, and the staff, as well as like the military and the civilian agencies. And what happened is that we actually fixed 556 wells for $50,000. So when we look at this, how can we help people in Natick? Well, I could argue, well, I'm a member and, you know, like hold the feet to the fire, but I would argue this instead. Is like you can reach across the aisle, come up with much better ideas, and start making government effective and helping people and having that as your sole focus. And that is exactly what I would offer.
Can I follow up? Doug, maybe you didn't hear or understand my question. I asked the question, what are your 3 biggest accomplishments that have directly helped the people of Natick, Sherborn, and Millis? What are they?
Let me think. Now, if we look at the concept of public service, I would argue this is a public service. This is public service when you decide to go and spend almost 4 years of your life working for the government for the assistance of everybody in the country, including the residents of Natick, Sherborn, and Millis, so that they actually have a better chance of winning the war in Afghanistan. I would argue that someone who does that and is actually fired upon, who actually goes on patrol where people actually get killed occasionally, I think that's public service, actually. And I think that benefits every single community, not just in this district, but across the country and across the state as well. And I would further say is that it's one thing to define public service as somebody who basically goes out and tries to devote their life to making life better. It's another thing to consider public service to be a job. It's an opportunity to help your pals. It's something which you do just because you're in with the in crowd. Absolutely, completely different point of view.
Let's go on. I have another question for you both, and David will answer this one first. But listen up. It's kind of a long one. In the last 2 years, state government has seen a series of mishaps, some of them tragic. The crime lab chemist who falsified thousands of drug tests, dozens dead and hundreds hurt by a compounding pharmacy the state hadn't inspected, a corruption scandal in the probation department, a disastrous launch of the new health coverage website, delays and confusion over licensing medical marijuana dispensaries. So this is a multiple choice question.
Okay.
As you look at all these problems, do they add up to A, a coincidence, B, evidence of a culture of corruption on Beacon Hill, or C, proof that government is by nature incompetent?
None of the above. That's D, none of the above. I have been proud to be selected by the Speaker of the House to lead the legislative response to at least 2, if not 3, out of the list that you have there. I was selected by the Speaker as the chairman of the House Committee on Post Audit and Oversight to investigate thoroughly the Department of Children and Families. I was selected by the Speaker to investigate what happened with the Department of Public Health with the compounding pharmacies. And that's because the legislature trusts me, respects my judgment, knows my experience as a prosecutor, knows my experience as an investigator. And as a result of that, we have reformed the Department of Children and Families. We have reformed the compounding pharmacy oversight. And we have already dealt with those issues.
Doug?
I was a reporter for 10 years, and I put a lot of importance upon the truth. So let me give you the other side of the story on Department of Children and Families. This is really what happened with the Department of Children and Families. Is someone called up and Mr. Linsky was speaking on Boston Herald Radio in February and said, Mr. Linsky, why is it that you didn't, this is in February, why didn't you actually look into DCF's many problems 9 months before? And the reason they asked in February is because in January, Jeremiah Oliver disappeared and subsequently emerged to have died. And Mr. Linsky at the time said, we're a committee with a staff of a few people. And he went on to say, we've got a lot on our plate right now. That was his answer, okay? And that was back in February. So the thing is that Mr. Linsky could have looked into, as chairman of the Post Audit and Oversight Committee, could have looked into what happened, but he declined to. In case you're wondering, the quote's actually on these discs, and I furnished that with the media here, so they can independently verify that. He didn't look into it, and one can only ask why. I don't know. He's here. Perhaps he'll say why he didn't bother to look into it. Child Rights is the advocacy group for children's welfare that sued the state. And they said, well, you know, the DCF absolutely needs to be reformed. Turns out Child Rights was pretty much true. The judge in November threw out the case because it didn't meet the standard of offending the decency, the conscience, shocking the conscience of the court. But the judge in November did also say DCF had failed to meet federal, state, and its own standards. So clearly it was a problem crying out for change. Apparently, we can only get to that change once the horse has bolted the stable, has departed the stable, and we can just bolt the gate behind him.
Doug, are you familiar with something called checks and balances and the role of the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judiciary? This is something that we learned here in Natick High School when I was a student here. And there are different roles. But did you see what I did? Did you watch the hearings when I took on the commissioner of the Department of Children and Families and forced her resignation? Did you see what we did in the House when we forced DCF to completely reform and they're now up and working well? Did you see how we changed their budget? Did you see how we injected the resources into that agency, Doug? That's what we've done. These are accomplishments. These are actual things. These aren't theories. These aren't theories. These are actual accomplishments that I've done.
Doug?
Oh dear, it's happening again. Okay, this is the entire story on the firing of Olga Roche. In March, we understood that, in April, we understood that the Grafton Police Department had sent a fax into DCF saying, hey, you know, there's a kid at risk. Turns out no one read the thing for 6 days. Well, the news came out on Saturday that, in actual fact, that this had happened and the child had unfortunately died. So, on Sunday, Mr. Linsky goes on John Keller at Large on Sunday morning, on April 27th, and says, no, it doesn't really matter to me at this point who the commissioner is and who the secretary is. That's what he said. Monday morning, he's standing behind the speaker on the House and says, yeah, she's got to go. He said, in fact, was quoted in the newspaper, it's simply a failure of leadership and a failure on management. So, in actual fact, when it comes down to like who pulls the strings, who decides what's going on, it's not the chairman of the Post Audit and Oversight Committee who actually should be looking into it. It's only the speaker.
Get to your closing remarks.
Thank you.
This one was sent in by one of our viewers. The state unemployment rate has fallen, but many families are still concerned about finding a job. What would you do to boost employment in the state? And I'm sorry, Doug, you get to go first on this.
There's a lot of things what we can do to boost employment. The problem is that this state is simply not business friendly in the sense that it has the cost of doing business here. We are number 46 in the country, so we're fourth from the bottom. So there's just, what we really have to do is do a bunch of things. Charlie Baker's come up with some pretty good ideas, is actually coming up and trying to like make the filing for corporations that fee less. We should look at the inventory tax. It's a tax of which every $30 is collected. One of those dollars is collected by the towns. One of those dollars goes to the town and 29 goes to the state. All of these things can be done. We also should be doing is looking at exactly speaking with companies, and as we see, Deval Patrick goes around the country and goes to Israel and things like that and says, hey, come on over to Massachusetts. It's a great idea. We should really be doing that, but we should be doing that a lot more. There's a ton of things more we could be doing in actually talking with these companies and saying, hey, what is it you need? We're going to put you together. We'll find that the education piece is here for you, that people here will actually have the qualifications and the skills that you need. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen to the extent that it should. Now, people will say things like, oh, the Trans-Pacific Partnership will be a great thing for Massachusetts. Well, true, but that's sort of like saying NAFTA will be a great thing for Massachusetts. It's not nearly enough. What we really have to do, though, is get this whole mindset that businesses are meant to be a cash cow for taxes and get into the concept is like simply, and the state needs to do this too, is simply saying businesses provide jobs, people need jobs, everybody needs jobs, everybody needs businesses, and we need to work much, much closer together to make that happen. And one of the best ways we can do that is by growing local businesses such as MathWorks, which has been a tremendous success here. And I have to like hand it to like all of the state, the bodies here in town, the planning board, the board of selectmen, the finance committee, who have all made it possible for companies like that to sit here and thrive.
David?
I'm glad that you brought up MathWorks, Doug, because MathWorks is one of my success stories. It's one of my accomplishments. I can't tell you how much I worked with the people at MathWorks and the town officials in getting MathWorks to grow and expand and be a vibrant, tremendous part of this community. Let me tell you about the 2 times that the governor, Deval Patrick, and I sat down with the people at MathWorks. Let me tell you about all of the times that I sat down with the Secretary of Economic Affairs and made sure that the state grants and that the state transportation dollars that incidentally come from that gas tax we brought in to make sure that MathWorks had the road infrastructure available. I'm glad that you brought up MathWorks, Doug, because it's one of my accomplishments and one of my success stories. So, and if you'd also had followed what the legislature had done, you'd know that just in the last session, we passed an important jobs bill that is going to help the economy grow even further. But again, Massachusetts has one of the best economies in the entire country. We have one of the lowest unemployment rates. We have one of the highest standard of living. We have the highest bond rating of any state. We have one of the highest reserve funds of any state in the union. And let me tell you also about another accomplishment of mine. It's called the Life Sciences Center and the Life Sciences Bill. I've been the champion of the life sciences industry because a lot of people in Natick, a lot of people in Sherborn, a lot of people in Millis work in the life sciences industry, and I make sure that I support it. Right by the Metro West Daily News is one of that success story, a company called Genzyme, building, right by the Metro West Daily News. That's as a result of the work that I did on behalf of creating life sciences jobs in Massachusetts. Doug, you need to know what's going on.
Your rebuttal, Doug.
Apparently, it all comes down to one person, and I want to extend my appreciation to all of the bodies in this town and in the state that have really made it possible for companies to grow here in town. It's been a phenomenal thing. And especially when you look at like the way the planning board actually worked with MathWorks and actually got extra money so that actually would provide the seed money for that improvement over at Route 9 and Oak Street. Terrific. Absolutely terrific. Couldn't be done without everybody working in the town and also with the state representative, of course. But really, the role, I would say, is like, you know, is the state representative really responsible for everything? Is he really responsible for the unemployment rate in Massachusetts? Well, then perhaps he can explain why it is that until earlier this year, the unemployment rate here in Massachusetts lagged the national average. Why is it that the unemployment rate underemployment? Why is it that we have now an economy where it's almost 0% unemployment for computer programmers? Terrific. But for everybody else, they're still out there and really, really concerned about a job. Why are we not trying to like focus on businesses all around this town and actually grow small businesses, especially the homegrown talent?
David, your rebuttal?
There's always more to be done. There's always more to be done to grow jobs, and I'm disappointed that you're going to vote to eliminate the good jobs that are being done right now, constructing the casinos that are currently under construction in Springfield and Plainville. Have you seen the TV ads with a half-constructed building in Plainville? Your vote would take away those jobs and leave that building empty. There's always more to be done.
Thank you. That's it for our questions. We will now move to closing statements. You have 2 minutes. And again, David will go first on this.
Thank you, Rick. I want to thank Natick Forever, and I want to thank the audience, both here in this Natick High School auditorium and watching at home. Natick is a great community, as are Sherborn and Millis. I grew up in this town. I've lived my entire life in this town. I am incredibly lucky to have raised my 3 sons in this town. No one can ever complain about my commitment to this community, my knowledge of this community, my accessibility to this community. You might not agree with me on every issue because I've taken thousands and thousands of votes in 15 years. But I don't think anybody can question my commitment, my knowledge, my dedication to the people of this community. I am proud of what I've accomplished. I am proud of the new buildings. I am proud of the new parks. I am proud of the road and bridge projects. I am very, very proud. But I'm equally proud of the constituent services that we've delivered to over 4,000 families. I can understand the desire for change. I understand it. It's appealing. Change, change, change. But let me tell you what. Come January, no matter what, Massachusetts is going to have a new governor, a new lieutenant governor, a new attorney general, a new treasurer, a new Senate president. The only constant at the top levels of government is going to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And I am involved in the leadership. I am part of the leadership of the Speaker. Who can deliver better for the people of Natick, Sherborn, and Millis? A member of the leadership team of the Speaker of the Massachusetts House of Representatives, or a freshman representative, one of 30 out of 160 members. Quite frankly, I'm proud of what I've been able to accomplish for this community. I am proud of the service that I've done to this community. I am proud to have lived in this community my entire life, and I ask for your support and I ask for your vote for re-election on November 4th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Your closing statement, Doug.
Oh, terrific. Thank you very much, Mr. Holmes. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Thank you, Natick Forever. And thank you, all of you, for coming here and also for watching on television. I'm running for state representative here in Natick, Sherborn, and Millis because I believe government is best when it's effective, efficient, and as small as possible while also getting the job done. Many of the most vulnerable people in our communities are suffering needlessly because we simply are not updating how we do business. We see this in the way Beacon Hill does its work. It's not doing enough to help seniors, nor those looking for work, nor those who are graduating from high school and college and looking for work. We need a change because we can do better. We can do better at growing jobs. We can do better at supporting local aid to our towns. And we don't need someone like my opponent who has voted repeatedly against local aid for our towns. We need to be better at stopping the unfunded mandates that are helping to raise property taxes in the towns we live in. It's time to bring change to Beacon Hill. We can't afford the same old system with the same old players, which are not accomplishing change. Frankly, we do not need a robot on Beacon Hill who votes with the Speaker 100% of the time in the last year and 99.6% of the time in the last 3 years. We need new players on Beacon Hill. It costs us simply too much in the long run, with spiraling property taxes and a very, very uneven job growth. Just this month, again, Money Magazine says the rate of job growth here in the Boston area will be 0.4%. That's half of 1%. It's just not good enough, and that is for the next 5 years. I care enough about public service to get things done, and I have risked my life for years to serve our nation. And I spent that time successfully come up with new and better ideas to improve some really, really tough areas. I'll return phone calls to our constituents. From now until Election Day, I'll be at Dunkin' Donuts on East Central Street in downtown Natick from 3 until 4 every Friday afternoon. Come by and say hi. And visit our website at grindleforrep.com. Thank you very, very much for considering me for your vote. It's simply time for a change.
Let's applaud both our candidates.
Very nice job, gentlemen. Very, very nice job. Thank you, Mr. Holmes, for your moderating tonight. It was just absolutely marvelous. It really was. Thank you. Representative Linsky and Mr. Grindle, thank you very much for coming here tonight, and I wish you both luck next month. All you folks out here tonight, really appreciate you being here. Ones in the audience and the ones watching at home. Remember that this will be rebroadcast a number of times on Natick Pegasus between now and the election, which we know election date is Tuesday, November 14th. These gentlemen have
November
Tuesday,
4th.
November the 4th. That's what I said. We all know that. Making sure we're listening. One more time. November the 4th.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you. These gentlemen will have some literature out in the foyer. If you'd like to contact them, they will have their websites and email addresses. Thank you very much for coming. November 4th.
Thank you, Doug.